how do you think we can regain the terrain of community? What are the steps we can take, for me as an individual, and then, as a family, and then as a society? How can we unfold as a community more and more? If Shoshana wants to go first.
Well, first, I just want to say, Alex, I think you're so much wiser than your years. I'm so impressed with you. You're only 21. Imagine that, BJ. Doing a podcast.
I don't think I can imagine that, but yeah.
I know. So I love that you spent a year on kibbutz, and I envy that. I wish that I had had that experience, because I do think that we are naturally social animals, and we're meant to live in community, and yet you're right, we have become very atomized. And again, I think this is part of the greater capitalist malaise that we're living in. There was a great article that David Brooks wrote about the failure of the nuclear family, that we forced ourselves into these unnatural units of, 2 parents and 2.5 children and the car and the suburban house. And that's not a natural way to live. There's so many more dependencies that we have, that we feel, and that we need. It really does take more than that to raise children well. And it really does take more than that to have a healthy marriage. It takes being in a community where you have outlets and other voices and other people around to manage and to care. And I have to say, this pandemic, one of the silver linings has been that seeing my neighborhood come to life and take care of people taking care of each other. People are dropping food off at each other's doors, and the bounty from one person's garden shows up on my doorstep, and another person made these beautiful letterpress cards. My neighbor made these beautiful letterpress cards with a Cornell West quote that says, "Justice is what love looks like in public."
Wow.
Which is so beautiful. And she just dropped these cards off at my door. And I've been making homemade granola and giving it to people in the neighborhood. And there are these mutual aid networks that are springing up across cities in America. And I've been a part of the one here in Berkeley. And I got matched with a 95-year-old woman named Kay. And when I called, they said, Kay she does her own shopping, but she just wants to have some girl talk. She wants some conversation. She's feeling lonely. And so I called Kay up and I said, Kay, how you doing? And she says, oh, I'm just fantastic. Every day is like Christmas. It's like Santa comes to my door every day. And I said, are you living in the same reality as the rest of us are, Kay? She said, well, I'll just tell you, I got the most perfect sandwich today for lunch. And it wasn't what was in the middle, it was the bread. Shoshana, the bread was just gorgeous. And she was just waxing on and on about the simple pleasures of her day. Mm-hmm. The bread in her sandwich, and the fact that her neighbor came and visited her for an hour, and that she is remembering being a child and growing up in South Side of Chicago and going to Catholic school, and how harsh the nuns with her. She's having all these memories of childhood. And I thought to myself, how is it that this 95-year-old woman who is living alone and, is probably quite limited, feels like she's in her glory days? And it was such a reminder to me that it's all in how you see it, right? And, for me to get jacked out of my misery as a middle-aged woman in the middle of a pandemic and hear this 95-year-old woman delight in life like that, mm-hmm. that is the gift of community. That's the gift of getting outside of yourself and doing service and seeing other people and realizing that you're not the only poor soul in the world, and that there's a much bigger community out there and that you should be in it. But it's easy to get trapped inside your own head. So I think, again, this is a forcing function that is breaking us out of that individualism and forcing us back into community. Sorry for such a long-winded answer, but that's what I've been thinking.
Oh, wow. Yes, BJ, I would love to hear what you have in mind.
Yeah, I think this individual thing, this autonomy thing, it's great. Like a lot of things, like independence, these are all ideals or objectivity. These are all, you can aspire towards them. I think we just need to get clear. Our teachers need to do a better job. We as parents, we just need to do a better job of saying you're never gonna. Autonomy is it may be a compelling force to push you, but it's not possible. Like you're never going to be fully autonomous. They never say that last little part. And so a lot of us waste tons of time trying to be independent when we can only ever relatively be so. So I guess where I'm going with this is just to pick up on what Shosha's saying. Yes, I think this our social nature is just a fact. So I think really what we're saying here is just that this is a process. Like we just need to be more honest with ourselves. Like none of us should be surprised that we need other human beings. And yet plenty of us would be surprised by that. We wouldn't own that. Somehow we think of that as weakness. So part of the shift that needs to happen here is I think we all have to sort of realize the link between strength and vulnerability. And be honest with ourselves to get there. It's not a weakness to need each other. And maybe just I learned that by becoming, disabled. I learned that being in a hospital, being so dependent on others, in a way I couldn't ignore. And then I could just look around and say I'd always been dependent. It was just a dramatic example that just forced its way into my eyeballs. And so that could happen right now for all of us. It's always been so, but now maybe we can be honest about that. So to me, this is about honesty. And then I would say one more thing about that. Another thing that Shosh picked up, pulling up, was it's not just about accepting all. It's not we're like passive creatures that we have no agency or no control. It's just we have a much more dynamic nature, a relationship to control. We are being controlled, we control. It's just not so monolithic. And where anybody has agency is in their perspective and how they see things. That is, for my money, the single greatest human trait. We can change how we see things. And that's the way we can change the world. That's the way we can change ourselves, is how we see ourselves, how we see things. And I get very excited about that creative enterprise that we humans have access to. But that's, if you're a control freak, if your thing is control, go point it there. That's real. That's honest.